He said he'd never hurt me, right before he shattered everything. Part 1. The promise I thought was real. My name is Angela. I'm 33, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had the kind of life that other people quietly envied. I wasn't rich. We didn't live in a mansion, but we had built something together, me and Ethan. A small house in the suburbs with a picket fence we painted ourselves, a golden retriever named Max, and a son who called Ethan his hero. We were the cliché, the couple that made it through the hard times and came out smiling. At least that's what I thought. Ethan was charming in a quiet, thoughtful way. He wasn't loud or dramatic. He was dependable. The kind of man who brewed my coffee every morning and left notes in my lunch bag even after 8 years of marriage. He fixed things. Broken chairs, wobbly doors, bad days. We met when I was 24, just out of college and working at a bookstore. He was older by 6 years, confident but not cocky. The kind of guy who listened, really listened. He walked into my world, stayed, and built a home in it. When he proposed 2 years later, I didn't hesitate. It felt right. And for a while, it was. We had Daniel 3 years into our marriage. Becoming parents shifted everything. The late-night giggles turned into midnight diaper changes. Weekend road trips became grocery runs, romance faded into routine, and we told ourselves that was okay. That this was what growing up looked like. Then came the day that should have been a celebration, my promotion. After 10 years in publishing, I'd finally made it to senior editor. It was a big deal. Ethan had been cheering me on for years. But when I came home, wine in one hand and takeout in the other, ready to surprise him, he wasn't there. It was strange. Ethan was always home by 6:30, especially when he knew I was coming back early. I waited. An hour passed, then 2. His phone went to voicemail. At 10:47 p.m. he walked in. No explanation, no apology. "Where were you?" I asked. He shrugged, kissed my cheek, and said, "Late meeting. I'm exhausted." Something about his tone scraped the inside of my chest. That was the first time I felt it, the shift. A barely noticeable fracture in the foundation we'd built. Days passed, then weeks. The man who once couldn't go a day without texting me sweet messages now barely replied with one-word answers. He started staying late at work more often. Missed Daniel's soccer games. He flinched when I touched him, like my skin had become foreign. I tried not to overthink it. Maybe he was stressed. Maybe he needed space. But the more I tried to reach him, the further he pulled away. And every night I fell asleep beside a man whose heart was no longer in the room. The turning point came one rainy Thursday. Daniel had left his iPad in Ethan's car, and I offered to grab it while Ethan was showering. I went outside barefoot, cursing the rain, opened the passenger side door, and saw a red scarf on the floor, lipstick stained, expensive. Definitely not mine. I froze. It was the kind of moment that doesn't scream. It whispers, creeps, knocks the air out of your lungs before your brain even registers why. I picked it up with trembling fingers, walked inside, held it out like a knife made of silk. "Whose is this?" Ethan didn't flinch. He looked at me. Not shocked, not apologetic, just tired. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he said. And just like that, the world I knew collapsed. Part 2. The woman who wore the red scarf. I stood there, holding that red scarf like it was burning through my skin. It was damp from the rain, the faint scent of perfume rising from it. Floral, too sweet, and completely unfamiliar. "What do you mean you didn't mean for it to happen?" I whispered, even though my voice barely worked. Ethan didn't cry. He didn't reach for me. He just lowered his eyes like a man who had already decided not to fight. "She works with me," he said. I knew what "works with me" meant. I didn't need the details, but they came anyway. Maybe out of guilt, maybe to get ahead of what I would find out eventually. Her name was Alyssa. She was new at his firm. Young, passionate, the word he used like it excused anything. It started with long talks after meetings, coffee runs together, laughing at things he hadn't laughed at with me in years. "I didn't plan it," he said again, voice flat. "It just happened." That sentence, "it just happened," broke something primal inside me, as if he'd slipped and fallen into someone else's bed. I asked the question I hated myself for needing the answer to. "Do you love her?" A pause. Then, "I don't know." It's strange how quickly reality can shatter. One moment you're a wife, a mother, a partner. The next you're just a woman who wasn't enough. That night I didn't scream. I didn't throw plates or cry in the shower. I tucked Daniel into bed, kissed his forehead, and lied right to his face when he asked, "Mommy, are you okay?" I slept on the couch. Ethan didn't come to me, didn't apologize again, just went upstairs like our marriage was a coat he'd taken off and forgotten to hang back up. The days that followed were thick with silence. We moved around the house like strangers in a hotel lobby, barely speaking, never touching. I tried to process it, tried to make sense of how the man I built a life with, the man who helped paint Daniel's nursery and whispered dreams into my ear at night, could betray me so effortlessly. I wanted to know everything and nothing. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them, her laughing, him smiling in ways he hadn't smiled at me in years. I hated the version of myself that started comparing, wondering if she was prettier, funnier, less tired looking after work. That's what betrayal does. It makes you turn against yourself long before you turn against the person who hurt you. Then one night, I followed him. It wasn't planned. He said he was working late again, his third night that week, and I couldn't sit in that house pretending everything was okay. One more second. I packed Daniel a bag and dropped him off at my sister's. Told her I needed air. She didn't ask questions. She saw the shadow in my face and let me go. I drove to Ethan's office building, parked across the street, and waited. At 9:12 p.m., he walked out. Not alone. She was shorter than I imagined. Pretty, yes, but in a polished, rehearsed way. Her laugh was loud. She touched his arm. He didn't pull away. They walked to her car, stood close, then kissed. I didn't cry. I didn't gasp. I felt something colder, like I was watching the final scene of a movie I'd seen coming for months. I confronted him the next day. "I saw you," I said. "I followed you. I saw the way you kissed her." He didn't deny it. Didn't cry. Didn't grovel. "Angela," he said, "I didn't know how to tell you." "Tell me what?" "That I was a placeholder until someone shinier walked in? That 8 years and a child weren't enough to keep him loyal?" I asked him the last question I ever would as his wife. "Are you in love with her?" He looked me dead in the eyes. "Yes." And with that, I knew it was over. Part 3. The Quiet Goodbye. The morning after he said yes, everything looked the same. The coffee pot dripped its rhythmic tune. Daniel padded into the kitchen still half asleep, and the world didn't crack open like it should have. But inside me, something had split wide and final. I packed his clothes while he was at work, not mine, his. Every shirt he'd worn when he kissed her, every tie I once straightened before board meetings, all of it, folded with the kind of silence that screams. I left out a single suitcase by the door with a note on top that said, "You don't get to live here and love her." He didn't call when he got home, didn't argue or plead. The next morning he was gone. His drawer in the bathroom empty. No more aftershave scent lingering in the hallway. Daniel asked where Daddy went. I told him the truth, or my version of it. "Daddy has to live somewhere else for a while." "Because he did a bad thing?" he asked. My heart sank. Because grown-ups make mistakes. I didn't tell him how some mistakes are made over and over again in the dark, behind locked doors. I didn't tell him how I watched the man I loved become a stranger with every unanswered text, every night he came home later, every time he stopped looking at me like I mattered. The days were hard. Not the kind of hard you see in movies, where the woman cries dramatically in the rain, but the quiet, bone-deep hard that comes with pretending you're okay when you're not. I got up, I worked, I made lunches. I tucked Daniel in at night. And I started therapy, because I knew if I didn't deal with this now, it would rot me from the inside out. My therapist asked me one question that stayed with me. "When did you first feel yourself disappearing in the marriage?" The answer came too easily. "After the miscarriage. We lost a pregnancy a year before all this. I was 6 weeks along, not far but far enough to imagine names, a nursery, another heartbeat in the house. Ethan didn't talk about it. He grieved in silence, or maybe not at all. I bled alone in the bathroom while he took conference calls. I cried into towels at night while he turned away in bed. That was when it started. Not the affair, that came later, but the forgetting. He forgot who we were, I forgot who I was, and we never tried to remember together. Weeks passed, then a month. He emailed once asking if we could talk. I didn't respond. A second message came. "Angela, I miss Daniel, I miss you. I know I messed everything up, but can we just talk even for 5 minutes, please?" I stared at the blinking cursor for a long time. My fingers hovered over the keys. I thought about those 5 minutes, what they'd cost me, Would I get closure, an apology? Would he ask to come back? Would I say yes? Then I thought about the night I sat in our car crying outside his office while he kissed another woman with the kind of ease that comes from repetition. It wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. And I was done carrying the weight of someone else's choices. So I wrote, "No, we had our time. You chose your path. I'm choosing mine now, for me, for Daniel." Then I deleted his number, blocked his email, shut the door on the chapter he set on fire. I won't lie. Healing isn't linear. There were nights I missed him, nights I wanted to scream at him, nights I dreamed he came home only to wake up to the cold space beside me. But slowly, the ache dulled, the anger softened. I started painting again. The brushes felt foreign at first, but familiar by the second week. I enrolled Daniel in swim lessons. I laughed at things again, really laughed, and I found something unexpected in the quiet: peace. Not the fragile peace of pretending everything's fine, the real kind, the one you build yourself when everything else falls apart. Part 4. When he came back. It was a rainy Thursday when I saw him again. Nearly 6 months had passed. The seasons had shifted. Daniel was taller, louder, asking bigger questions. I had started to live again, not just survive. The colors of life were returning in brushstrokes, smiles, and the scent of fresh beginnings. And then, Ethan knocked on my door. He didn't text, didn't call, just stood there, soaked, silent, and uninvited, holding a small gift bag in one hand and a look on his face I couldn't read. "Can I come in?" he asked. "No?" He looked down. "Just 5 minutes?" I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. My body shielded Daniel, my heart guarded by the pain I had finally learned to carry with pride. "I just wanted to give this to him," he said, holding out the bag. Inside was a small toy truck, the kind Daniel used to love when he was younger, too young. "He's moved on from those," I said plainly. "He's into dinosaurs now." Ethan laughed nervously. "I guess I'm late on a lot of things." "Yeah," I said. "You are." He didn't ask to come back that day, and I didn't cry. There was no screaming match, no dramatic breakdown in the rain, just two people who used to be everything, now standing with years between them. "I'm in therapy," he said after a moment. "I've been working on myself, trying to understand why I did what I did." I crossed my arms. "And?" "I was lonely," he said. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. "You were lonely while I was grieving our child, while I was cleaning up the pieces of our life alone, while I was still here, still choosing you. You were lonely with someone who never left." His face fell. "I know. I was wrong. I ruined everything." There it was, the admission. But it didn't change anything. "Then why are you here?" "Because I want to be a father," he said. "Daniel deserves that." I looked into his eyes, and for a moment I saw the man I married. But only for a moment. "You can be a father," I said quietly, "but not at my expense, and not without boundaries." It took time, court papers, mediated visits, awkward drop-offs, and stiff conversations. Daniel was hesitant at first, but children are resilient in ways adults often aren't. Ethan began to show up, really show up. No more empty promises or late nights. But that didn't mean I trusted him. Trust isn't rebuilt by words. It's rebuilt by showing up, consistently, for years. And he had a long road ahead. One night after Daniel's bedtime, I sat with a cup of tea, flipping through an old photo album. There we were, smiling on beaches, celebrating anniversaries, holding hands at hospitals and airports. I used to think those moments were lies because of how it ended. But now, I see them differently. They were real, at least to me. That version of us existed, and it mattered. But what matters more is the version of me that came after. The woman who chose healing over hatred, who said no when she wanted to say yes, who learned that endings aren't failures. Sometimes they're just necessary beginnings. I don't know if Ethan will ever fully understand the damage he caused, but I do know this. I'm no longer waiting for apologies that will never be enough. I'm no longer keeping space for a man who didn't fight to stay. And I'm no longer broken. I am rebuilding. And this time, the foundation is me. Part 5. The woman I became. It's strange how healing isn't marked by milestones. Not really. There's no grand moment when you suddenly realize you're better. It sneaks up quietly. One day, you look in the mirror and you don't see heartbreak anymore. You see someone wiser, stronger, free. That's how it was for me. I didn't wake up healed. I woke up and realized I no longer needed to check Ethan's social media. I didn't rehearse imaginary confrontations in the shower. I didn't feel hollow when someone said family. And I didn't flinch when Daniel asked, "Why don't you love Daddy anymore?" I smiled and said, "Because sometimes love changes." He nodded like he understood, and maybe, in some way, he did. I took Daniel to the park every Saturday. We ran, laughed, raced sticks down tiny streams. We were building our own version of joy, one small moment at a time. Other parents smiled at us, unaware of the battles behind our smiles. One mom approached me after Daniel made her daughter laugh hysterically. "You're a great mom," she said. I paused, blinking. No one had said that in a long time. I'd been too consumed with guilt, with what-ifs, with should I have done more. But hearing it, simple, honest, filled something in me I didn't know was still empty. "Thank you," I said, and meant it. I started writing again. It had been years since I let myself create. I poured it all out. The betrayal, the unraveling, the quiet strength I had to grow in the ruins. My story didn't need to be published. It just needed to be heard, even if only by me. One night I read a chapter out loud to myself. I wept through it. Then I smiled, not because it was sad, but because I had survived it. And survival, I realized, is not a whisper. It's a battle cry in the silence. Ethan was becoming a decent father. Not perfect, but present. He showed up. He apologized to Daniel when he messed up. He stopped trying to make things right with me in the wrong ways. He respected my boundaries. We coexisted, not as lovers, not even really as friends, but as parents with a shared purpose. I didn't forgive him all at once. Forgiveness for me wasn't letting him off the hook. It was letting myself off the hook, letting go of the shame, the guilt, the weight of believing it was my fault that he strayed. It wasn't. People cheat because of who they are, not because of who you're not. I began to date again, carefully, quietly. I didn't tell Daniel right away. The first time someone made me laugh until I cried, I realized how long it had been, how much I had missed feeling wanted, not for comfort, not for duty, but for being fully, unapologetically me. He was kind, patient, curious about my world, not just his own. And I told him everything, not on the first date, not even the third. But when I did, he didn't flinch. He just held my hand and said, "You're incredible." I didn't fall in love quickly, but I learned to trust slowly. And slowly, I let joy in again. One evening, Daniel fell asleep on the couch next to me, his dinosaur toy tucked under his arm. I turned off the TV and just watched him, breathing softly, so full of life. I thought back to that hospital room, to the moment I gave birth while my husband gave himself to someone else. I had once believed that moment would define me forever. It didn't. This one did. Me, sitting in the home I rebuilt. Next to the child I loved more than my own pain, filled with a quiet strength no one could take from me again. This is who I became. Not bitter, but better. Not broken, but beautifully rebuilt. Not alone, but at peace with my own company. I lost a husband, but I found myself. And that was the greatest love story of all.